But of course, we know that the European Union systematically undermines all these principles and all these values. In fact, you may argue that the EU itself is an affront to democracy. And so, it's how when you look at this, it's hard really to describe it as anything else but propaganda. So it's hard to say that the EU is upholding
people don't vote for the Commission.
Absolutely. So the entire structure of the European Union is anti-democratic to the core. And in fact, when you go and look at many of the programs that are funded under the guise of promoting EU values, we see that in fact many of these projects are actually aimed at promoting ideologies, political views, and even ways of organizing society that are often at odds with the prevailing sentiment of a lot of people. And so we find a lot of projects aimed at promoting genderism and climatism and multiculturalism, many of the pet projects of the European Union.
So break it down for us. How does this propaganda by proxy, as you call it, shape the EU's democratic legitimacy? Are dissenting voices actively suppressed? Or is it just that some groups are more successful in securing funding?
Well, I think when you look at the the kind of projects that are funded and the kind of NGOs that get virtually, most, if not all of the funding, we see that all these projects have a clear political bias. So as I was saying, either they were aimed at promoting specific, generally liberal progressive ideologies that the European Commission claims to hold dear. But in fact, even worse, we find that a lot of these projects are actually aimed just at promoting the European Union itself, just at promoting the very idea of supranational integration. And so we find, countless projects that are aimed at showing to citizens the importance of the European Union, the benefits of the European Union, the importance of EU integration, and in fact of the need for even greater integration. And in fact, this becomes even more apparent when you see that virtually all the pro-EU, all the federalist organizations in the European Union get very significant amounts of money from the Commission, essentially to promote, the Commission's own goals. And there's a complete ideological convergence here between the Commission and the NGOs that take this money. And there's nothing wrong in advocating for greater European integration, if that's what you believe in. But I think it's questionable that you do that, taking money from the very organization that you want to give more power to, in this case, the Commission or the European Union, more in general. And so, it's how when you look at this, it's hard really to describe it as anything else but propaganda, or what I call in the report, propaganda by proxy.
Does that mean is the EU's relationship with NGOs an example of bureaucratic deep state power where unelected institutions hold more influence than elected officials?
Absolutely. I mean, it's pretty clear that so the European Commission decided years ago to sort of involve civil society organizations in the decision-making process as a way of boosting its democratic legitimacy. And this is something
it's not necessarily a bad thing, right?
That in itself is not a bad thing. I think it's important to clarify that not all civil society organizations are bad. Not all NGOs are bad. I would say that, in fact, civil society has a crucial role to play in a healthy democracy, insofar as they're doing what civil society organizations and what NGOs should really do, which is convey the aspirations, even the grievances of, people, of ordinary people or segments of the population, to governments, to those in power. They should be a check on bureaucratic power, on government power, and or at the very least, they should, stand up for the rights of the weakest members of society.
It's hard to be a check, though, on government power if your pockets are being lined by that same government.
Exactly. So when what a lot of these NGOs and civil society organizations do is, in fact, a complete inversion of what the role of civil society should be. So instead of conveying to governments the aspirations of ordinary people, they're channeling to ordinary people, to civil society, in fact, the ideologies and the political goals of those in power. I mean, this is a literal inversion of what civil society organizations should do. And I think it's questionable whether they should even be considered civil society organizations or even NGOs, when often they're completely organic, really, to the EU machinery and the EU, in this case, propaganda machinery. And just as most people would say that the NGOs that were in some cases fully funded by USAID were not conveying to their local governments the needs of the civil society in those countries. They were conveying the needs and political goals and objectives of their funder, in this case the US government, or at least USAID. But the same goes for a lot of these NGOs that essentially take EU money to engage in propaganda.
I find it somewhat bizarre, Thomas, that from day one, where our think tank MCC Brussels was founded just over 2 years ago, and from day one when we came, people in the media and in other NGOs were busy pointing fingers saying, where do you get your money from? And we were 100% transparent about it. We get our budget from MCC in Budapest, who don't tell us what to do or what to say, because that's decided here by Frank Ferredi and the team at MCC Brussels. We were very transparent about our funding, but somehow they put a question mark over our legitimacy. These are the same groups who are being paid by the Commission to continue a cycle of propaganda.